22 meeting of the Bellingham Planning Board. Jim, the first item on our agenda is going to be the continued public hearing on 353 Maple Street. Can you give us an overview of where we are tonight?
Absolutely. So 353 Maple Street, at our last meeting of the board, the board requested that a draft list of conditions be completed for your consideration tonight. That list of conditions considers everything that's been discussed over the last 6 months or so, including peer review responses, early discussions with early hearings, and last meeting. Since that time, we've been able to provide the applicant and the board with that list of conditions, and you have that in front of you this evening for your consideration.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I'd like to disclose something.
Certainly.
So 9 years ago or so, Mackey and Mackey represented my family.
I believe you.
Yeah, it was my
Dad?
senior.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'm going to disclose that tonight
All right.
and go from there. So,
I'm a little embarrassed because I don't remember it at all. But
well, we only were in the same room once, I believe.
Got it.
So, you were the main representative, but
hopefully
you
you
came on
good job
board
for you.
recently. From there.
So you'll wait for a determination.
Yeah, I'm not gonna recuse myself tonight. I'm staying on the case and I'll file some paperwork with the town clerk tomorrow, and go from there. Okay? I'm just making that
Yes.
disclosure to you so
Thank
that you hear that.
We're very transparent.
Yep.
We go overboard
Like
to
I
be
said,
transparent. Gentlemen, you want to bring us up to speed where you think you are right now?
Sure. And I guess, Mr. Chairman, I'm going to start with a question because I can go all the way back to day one and come forward, or kind of snapshot where I think we are.
Well, you can bring us up to date since our last meeting.
Okay, sure. So since the last meeting, we have had some good discussions with Jim, and they revolved mainly around two of the conditions.
Okay,
So I can say we've seen the whole list, and in principle, we're good with all of them.
perfect.
Two of them, however, because our client is a national concern, would like things basically to reference either a bylaw or a law or something, rather than simply say if it's excessive noise.
So I assume one thing you're talking about is the removal of snow from vehicles.
That is one of them, yes.
Okay. And I believe that is a Mass General law.
We do believe that as well.
And I know when it first started, there was some leeway.
Mhm.
My impression is in the past 2 to 3 years, the leeway is no longer there.
Right.
When they see it, they enforce it.
And I believe that to be true.
Okay.
And the reason we actually are asking, and I don't know, Jim, I think is back there somewhere. I proposed some language to him later this afternoon.
Yeah,
so
we have a copy of that.
Okay, great. So that's basically why we said, if we just talk about Mass General laws, no one can argue with it.
Fine.
But we have existing tenants who go, well, you can't add this to us.
I understand because they were in there before.
Right. So if that is one of them, that would be, we would ask the board's consideration to look at our language.
Absolutely.
And then the other one was the noise. 100% agree. The building inspector should be able to walk down there and go, shut your door.
Okay,
No arguments with that.
fine.
But we would want him to say it's based on the bylaws of the town of Bellingham.
Fine.
That's all we ask.
Jim, are you in agreement?
Yeah, I think the red line changes are fine. I just want to caveat that town council does need to take a look at these as well.
Okay. And with regards to, we asked for some updates from BSC, your discussions with BSC. Where does that stand, sir, Mr. Lee?
Yes, I've provided the information to BSC. I think everything's all set.
Okay. You want to pull a chair up or
Sure.
be 6 feet?
No, I'm okay.
Come on up.
Yeah, Scott Thornton with Vanessa Associates, the traffic. I think I don't have an update from the last meeting. The comment letter that came from BSC had no other comments regarding traffic.
Okay. So has the board had a chance to look at the June 20th memo from DSC Group? Do you have any concerns?
No, I think we're good.
Our concerns were somewhat limited to last meeting.
Yeah, well, I think is BSC on the call. I don't know if you wanted to.
I am. Good evening, Dominic Rinaldi with BSC. Yes, yeah, to quickly summarize, as the chairman said, at the last meeting, there was really one outstanding comment. It had to do with some drainage calculations, which
Yep.
the applicant provided to us. We reviewed, and we think everything's good.
Okay,
That's basically the summary of what our letter said, too.
great. Thank you very much. Do the board, do we have any questions? I know, Nick, you might have seen a little bit of a wordsmithing issue.
It was just decision 4, just the phrasing impacts created added traffic. I think there's 2 addeds in there. It just needs to be rephrased for clarity.
Yep, agreed. Thanks, Nick.
And then on the copies we have, Jim, I think my printer had a senior moment and it scribbled some stuff out on item 18. But item 18 simply indicates that they will adhere to the Massachusetts general laws for removal of snow and ice. Correct?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay,
I had one, Mr. Chairman.
certainly.
Number 5, Mechanic Street and Maple Street. I think it's High Street and Maple Street.
Yes, that's correct. All right.
Correct.
Yep, agreed.
I have one as well. I think condition 23 has the wrong applicant listed. Not Howland Development, that's.
Okay. Jim will pick that.
Where I took this decision from, or these conditions from.
Yeah. I understand.
I figured as much.
That happens.
Well, yeah, we're so good, we're making board look like language as we move forward.
Can I ask a question?
Absolutely.
Thank you. So for number 18, where it says eco-friendly, is that defined in 19? Does that mean phosphorus, no phosphorus-based fertilizer? Or ice removal? What is eco-friendly?
Right, so that's not a defined term, and to my knowledge, that's some language that has been worked out over time through different attorneys to be somewhat broader than originally planned. You can't have phosphorus in your fertilizers. That's mass general law, I believe. So I think it's a broader term. We could certainly refine it if you like.
Well, I didn't know what the intent, if there's an intent to limit certain kinds of salt or.
Yeah, there is. What they're trying to do is try to remove as much salt as they can from these areas, especially with ice melt. That doesn't get into the aquifer.
So is it the salt that we're looking?
Well, salt and fertilizer as well. They're trying to prevent runoff into the water. So that is the term they've used, eco-friendly.
So I would suggest that if a term is too broad, it means nothing. So eco-friendly could mean whatever you say it means at the time. If the intention is to limit salt-based ice melt, we should either say including salt-based ice melt.
No, you don't want salt-based.
So what they sometimes use instead of salt is magnesium
Yes,
chloride.
or
calcium
caliper, or some of that stuff that is better. They're trying to get away from salt.
I might suggest you just add into the end of it eco-friendly in order to minimize the salt impact of the aquifer.
Or salty chemical impact to the
That's fine. That's what we're trying to do, protect the
Yep.
watersheds.
And so we're gonna add on that, ice melt and reduce impact of chemicals to the aquifer. You know, something that in my tenure as a risk manager, we've used eco-friendly, but we're trying to reduce spillage into the aquifer. So we have that correction. Anything else?
So have another, for number 8, Jim, for the last decision that we used, we had a similar provision regarding the bay doors. I believe we had an express statement that when the bay doors are not in use, they'd be closed. And that was for the purpose of minimizing noise.
That's why we've added the red line.
Yeah, I'm looking at the red line. It doesn't say that the doors will be closed. It says that could be, may employ measures such as, but it doesn't mandate the closing of the bay doors when not.
Well, the problem is with number 8, they're already working under a different set of conditions that were granted. So similar to, I believe what you're going to tell me is similar to the ice mill. It's difficult to hold an existing tenant to something new for the addition.
Right.
When they moved in, it wasn't applicable.
I agree. And from what it's.
So like the reverse of the Portsmouth Street.
Pretty much. Yes, I agree with you, Mr. Chairman.
But it's, I don't see the sort of the nexus. I think that keeping the door, I don't see how that harms anyone to keep the bay doors closed. It's just history has taught us over time that those keeping the bay doors have become a source of problems for neighbors, and it's low hanging fruit. And it's something that we included in our previous decisions. And this, I don't see how that operation would impact existing operations at the site.
I guess first I would ask Jim to chime in, because everything that's in black, I am led to believe came from your previous decision, and it did not say that they would always be closed.
Well,
So-
our prior decision on the warehouse before had an express statement that said bay doors shall be closed.
Fair enough. I can't argue with you on that one. but
Jim,
that was
can you
not my
recall that?
understanding.
Right, so, excuse me, if you look at the draft condition list and the track changes for 8, it does strike the user of the site shall close the dock bay doors. And so that, Brian is right in terms of we have used that in previous iterations. And discussing with the applicant, you know, I think the concern was, as the chairman mentioned, the previous applications were new developments. This one is an existing campus. And so introducing very specific language for a third of the building, I think, at least from what I took, was the concern. But, you know, again, the applicant is welcome to speak to that.
Sure. So to elaborate, we have an existing building that has no condition about the door whatsoever. And I would like to bring back to the board's attention, we were required to do a sound study. We were required to do significant sound mitigation, all of which lead to the conclusion that we will be compliant with your noise standards, and the neighbors won't be harassed by noise coming off of the site. Be that as it may, 2/3 of this building, no matter what I write here, they legally can tell me to go pound sand. And so we're trying not to set up a situation where I've got one tenant who can do one thing, one tenant who can't. Now I have tenants arguing with each other. It just sets up an almost untenable situation for the building as it is right now. If this was brand new construction, we would have, amongst everyone here, a lot more leeway because no one's there, no one's done anything, but that's not the case. We're adding on, relatively speaking, a minority of the square footage of the site to an existing operation. And I would also submit that as far as I know, and I believe Jim has the same opinion, there haven't been any noise complaints in the site.
Exactly. That's exactly right. And we're tinkering something that works. And so by adding 58,000 square feet of space and operation and additional trucks and additional people working there, we're adding to the potentially the ambient sound. And what we've learned over time is that this is low hanging fruit in terms of making the neighbors happy. And that sound funnels out through these doors. And I can't believe that your commercial lease is so inflexible not to allow existing tenants to comply with the provisions of a.
I can't force them to.
Your provision, I guarantee your commercial leases are flexible enough to allow them to impose the regulations that is imposed upon you by the town. I would think that is absolutely true. So I don't buy that for a second. Secondly, hold on.
Brian, excuse me. I don't think this is the point. Never mind, I'll reserve judgment.
It raises an interesting question, Jim, with regard, so I represent a client now before the Rentham ZBA, where there was a 1986 decision that limited the facility to a 60 dB limitation. Currently, the DEP standards are 10 over ambient. So there's and there was an intervening special permit from the original construction of the building. Then they did an addition such as this one. There was no mention of sound limits. So my question is, and this might be for town council, does this supersede or is it in addition to the special permit that was issued a couple of years ago?
So yeah, we can nail that down with town council, but the intent here is that it is incorporated in, it's an addition to the existing ones. As you'll see at one of the last conditions here cites the old decisions as coming along with this decision here. So all the conditions from the previous decisions still hold true, and this is added to reflect the addition.
So this goes back, if you read our item number 25. It goes back to a modification decision dated June 27, 2019. And it lists other dates for special permits, scenic road, so on and so forth.
And to the extent that there's any concerns about existing tenants and imposing upon them new terms in their lease, we could certainly add a condition that says all new tenants shall comply with, or all new leases will include the following provisions, similar to the ones that we did for the other warehouses. That makes sense, Jim?
Yeah, I mean, you certainly could add some language in there reflecting that new users could. I could work with the applicant between now and the next meeting to nail down some language there if the board so chooses.
I'm sorry. We vetted this, I want to say almost 3 years for these warehouses. It was a long, drawn-out process that I believe was litigated and then dropped. I think it's difficult because we have enhanced some of our language to go back retroactively and apply it to a current tenant. My understanding was, and certainly I'm not a lawyer, that moving forward, we could strengthen those decisions for future tenants, but we couldn't weaken them. So I feel comfortable the way it's written. I don't know me and the board members.
I hear you, but I think your concern's not warranted in that they have a provision. I bet you $1,000. They have a provision that they have a provision in their commercial lease that says the tenant will comply with all regulations, permitting, blah, 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 of the town. And we're not imposing anything.
But Brian, our decision wasn't based on contracts with tenants. Our decision was based, if you look at line number 25, the decisions we approved after 3 years of vetting this project. And I don't think it's prudent, and I believe me, I'm concerned for the neighbors, but it's difficult to go back and attach something to these people, these tenants, because we've, enhanced what we're doing for the benefit of the town. I just,
We do that all the time. They're adding.
we don't amend decisions retroactively.
We're not amending decisions.
We certainly are.
No, they're adding.
You're saying that number 25 is no longer in play because of the language, and you want to strengthen the language for one tenant. That's just my opinion. Again,
I don't.
I didn't go to law school.
Brian, can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think it makes sense that any opportunity to have the bay doors closed, it should be what we aim for. If we have a week where it's 100 degrees straight and the tenant wants to open doors partially or all the way for ventilation or cooling, what would you say to that?
So it's a slippery slope, right? So to go back to the client that I have in Rentham, they keep their bay doors open.
Okay.
And a butter is complaining and saying, that's way too loud, you gotta close your bay doors.
Sure.
And they say, we're compliant. But which decision are you compliant with? So this is different in that there's an existing tenant in a facility that's being expanded.
Okay.
So can they keep their doors open when they're loading and unloading?
Mhm.
And does it make sense to close it at 15 minutes from now and another truck's coming? Probably not, right?
Mhm.
But it gives the town teeth if there's a problem 5 years from now and they say, hey, this is a problem, because it might not be a problem, right? But in 5 years, it's a problem and the doors are open and there's music playing and there's banging and pneumatic tools and hydraulic lifts, and it's not imposing anything on anyone. And it's certainly within our discretion to do it. I think it's not as controversial as or onerous imposition at all. That's just my thing.
Thanks.
Is there a way to define excess noise a little bit better? I mean, 10 points over ambient at this point. Is there a way to try to parse that would address that, Brian?
Let me ask the applicant a question.
Sure.
We've had no complaints so far about noise. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yeah, not in the last, however long it's been up. That's correct.
So, at least 3 years. If something were to happen down the road, we can't predict down the road. Let's say, as Brian said, 5 years down the road, something happens. They're in violation of the previous language as well. Correct?
Yeah, correct. They have to adhere to all the previous decisions as well.
So they would still be in violation. And your business is explain in detail what noise you generate in that business. Loading, unloading. You don't repair your trucks there, correct?
No.
You're
It's a
bringing
warehouse.
in and out material.
That's it.
That's what they do now.
If I may,
Certainly.
just 2 comments. We actually added in to Mr. Devine's comment, in accordance with the provisions of the Bellingham bylaws. Your bylaws are actually fairly well defined what is acceptable for noise.
Mhm.
We actually asked to put that in because we actually thought excessive noise was we agreed with you, excessive noise was undefined. So we just want to cite your existing bylaws, and that's what, working with Jim, we came up with. And to Mr. Salisbury's comments, lease aside, I hear what you said, and I may paraphrase badly, so forgive me, but if the concern is that 5 years from now, the building commissioner needs to be able to go down there and enforce something, again, we have noise bylaws. If he's violating any of them, I would put right in here, I actually think it's almost not necessarily overkill, but this is definitely a belt and suspenders thing. He already has the right to go down there and issue a violation of any of the noise bylaws there is. We're putting it currently in black and red, and that we thought covered anything. Whether it's onerous or not, if you tell the tenant he's got to keep the doors closed, you are changing his operations, or hers, I guess. I shouldn't be sexist these days. And it's not my call to tell you if it's onerous or not. It's the guy who's signing the lease. But I don't see where we haven't given, I don't even think it's given. I think we're just spelling out the rights the town already has. If there's a violation, the zoning enforcement officer absolutely can go down there and issue a violation notice. And then we fix it or go to the ZBA to appeal it or however. God bless you if you're in Rentham. I've been there a few times myself, so I get it. And to an extent, we are taking a bit of a risk. My client thinks he runs a first-class operation that's quiet. If the neighbors disagree, we're going to end up in a different forum, whether we like it or not, unless we can just shut the doors. And we're not against necessarily keeping them closed, but I don't think regulating a day-to-day operation in a special permit is necessarily the best way to do it. When you have, in my opinion, already the protections, the zoning enforcement officer go down there tomorrow, if they're leaving the doors up and having a rock concert in there, and shut them down and issue a violation notice, whether or not this even gets approved. So we're trying to put something in black and white so no one has to guess. And more importantly, our tenants go, oh, yeah, got it.
So what's the verbiage you would like to add?
I'd like to keep it the way we have proposed it to you. Basically, the building inspector has access, which he already has, but this makes it even clearer. And he can enforce anything in the Bellingham bylaws. And again, I think you have a scenic road noise bylaw as well as a general noise bylaw. So this is covered under 2 sections already.
So I completely agree with you that number 8 regurgitates what is the existing law. The thing that was in addition to the existing law is what was stricken in that keeping the doors closed. So that was the additional remedy, or really the only thing that wasn't already in the building inspector's toolkit to enforce that. I'll give you an example. We had a facility off of Maple Street, South Maple Street, and they abut a condo association. They kept their doors open. It wasn't in their permit to keep them closed, and it was a gigantic problem for our board, for the people that lived next to it. We couldn't get them to just do the right thing, right? And we had a building inspector at the time. We had all of the same sound. So what we've learned from experience since that time is that whenever we have a warehouse that's relatively close to neighbors, we say, keep your doors closed. Please help us help you and avoid problems in the future. Just please keep your doors closed. And obviously, if you got 16 trucks coming in over an 8-hour day, the doors are going to be open for a long time. But please, just help us help you. And this gives the town something to point to and say, hey, company, you got to keep these doors closed. And here's the decision. So that's where this all comes from. I'm not trying to be mean-spirited, but we've had many bay door conversations in this very room. And it's just low-hanging fruit. So I guess I understand where your clients come from. They want to keep this as clean as possible. But that's, our job is to just to make sure there's no problem from the town's perspective, and that's where I'm coming from.
So would it be,
Is it fair to say, sir, when not in use, the bay doors could be closed? Except for extreme
I
weather.
gotta look around and see who's on this call, because if John is on there he is. I would actually have to punt this over to Mr. Detweiler.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks, by the way, for turning out for this single issue tonight. We appreciate your participation. Would you please repeat the question so I could be sure I understood it?
Is it, with that, the doors are closed when they're not being used?
That's what it said.
I understand that,
Yeah, that's exactly.
except for extreme weather conditions.
Well, may I speak for a moment to the
Absolutely, sir.
practicality of this?
Absolutely.
So let's assume we are negotiating a new lease with a tenant and we incorporate this requirement. You know, this is a lease, it's negotiated at a corporate level, and it's got, it may be negotiated 1,000 miles away from Bellingham.
Mhm.
And it gets executed, and the people that are working on site will never see that lease. There are going to be supervisors and foremen that may get told of this provision and directed to enforce it, but they will come and go. And there are 5, 10, 20, 30 employees potentially on site that are told they're coming and going, and they're opening the doors and closing the doors, and no one is ever going to pay attention to what the lease says. Not that we wouldn't want them to, but as a practical matter, that just won't happen. And I think that the much more effective enforcement mechanism is what we've incorporated into our proposed language here, which is for the town to threaten to shut them down. That's a much, and you know, we've crafted it such that there are, you know, it might include closing the doors or other measures, so long as the noise is mitigated to the satisfaction of the town. I mean, there's just no way the day laborers working, the warehouse laborers in these buildings are going to understand that they're supposed to keep the doors down. It's just going to be so remote from the intent that however well-intentioned we are, it's just impossible to enforce.
That's exactly my point. That's exactly my 5 years from now, 15 minutes from now, 25 years from now. No one at the operational level is gonna know, is gonna keep the door open. We're gonna have a problem. And the town can dust off this decision and say, oh, wait, they have to keep the doors closed. That's something we can enforce specifically. We don't have to call them in. We don't have to wait until they file a development plan or a special permit, and then we can hook them to fix the problem. That's what happened the last time. It just gives the town a tool to make things right for the neighbors. So you made my point. That's exactly my point. It's not ever going to be truly enforced unless it's a problem. And when it becomes a problem, it's right here. It's right there. Fix it.
But that remedy is not unavailable to the town. The town still has a broader remedy to however it gets accomplished to mitigate the noise that's being made in violation of the bylaws.
And if we didn't have firsthand experience with this very issue within the past 3 to 4 years, where we had a company with bay doors open and it was contributing to the sound, but we didn't have enough to get the company to force them to do it. We didn't have that very experience just in the recent past. I would completely agree with you, but from practically speaking, that's exactly what happened. That's exactly what happened. And that's the concern that we've had, and we've always added this
this little extra tweak to make ourselves feel better and to help the neighborhood and to help the applicant help themselves, because we can point to them, just please do this, help us out. So it's not in the abstract, we've lived it in this very room, we've lived it. You know what I mean? So we've had many warehouses that came before us and we stick this in. You know, so I don't think it's really such a big deal. I get it. You guys want it clean. You want a national tenant to come in. You want it to be as neutral and clean, as easy as you can to negotiate these things and make it work. But that's not our job, right? Our job is to make sure the neighbors, if there's a problem and there hasn't been, and there's no reason to believe there will be, but if there is, the town has the tools to fix it. I'm not trying to be mean. It's just, we've had this experience and it's never really been a problem to stick this line in.
Well, I can't speak to the other instances. I know that our project currently includes berms, and we're building an extension of that berm to help mitigate the noise. And we've demonstrated that there's not a noise problem today. And we've heard that there are no complaints we know of to date. And again, I think that the town has remedies, including asking the tenants to close their doors when they're not in use, their bay doors.
I wish it was that easy, but it's not. And like I said, we've had this issue before.
Mr. Chairman, if
Yes.
you like,
We're gonna be here all night.
yeah,
on this point.
if you like, if this is
You
the,
reach out to the applicant and draft some alternative language that addresses the board's concern and the town's concern. And also, while you're doing that, I think another avenue we may want to look at is incorporating a noise program into an O&M program so that it is on site and can be reviewed as part of their, let's say, risk management or safety management manual for, each future tenant. So it's outlined in the document, in the building, on the O&M plan in regards to noise, once we come down to an agreeable language. Is that,
That's fine.
Brian, is that towards where you want to go?
As long as it's addressed somehow.
Okay. I just don't want to sit here and,
Sure. Yeah, we have no problem working with you.
litigate between, two attorneys.
It's always dangerous.
Anything else? So I think the next item we need to do is hear from the public. Is there anyone in the public has any comments or their hands raised?
I'm not seeing anybody with their hand raised on this side.
Okay, so I think what I'd like to do is, Jim, how much time will we need? Well, we only have one meeting in July. Is it feasible that we can have this language drafted early in July
Yes,
and provided to us to review?
absolutely.
And then we can give our comments?
Yeah.
Is that fair, Jim?
Yes, absolutely. I more than enough time to draft any decisions if the board wishes to go down that route. I did have one question for Mr. Lee, though. The plan set, I just wanted to make sure that emergency access road got updated. And
That's supposed to be, I believe, tar now?
right, the fire chief, and make sure that got resubmitted back to the department.
Yes, I submitted 2 hard copies.
Great.
Perfect. Thank you.
May I ask, does that still have a gate on it?
Yes.
Yes, okay, thank you.
So I think at this point, we're at a point where we're looking at probably asking Jim to draft a decision. Correct me if I'm wrong, Joe, I think that's our next move.
Yeah, if the board is,
But honestly, I think it also, because we have this pending, I need to leave the meeting open, correct? So we
right,
can
so
discuss
yes,
it.
the board can leave the hearing open if they want to incorporate any additional information. But if you've exhausted your review, you certainly are welcome to ask for me to start drafting a decision for your review at the next meeting.
I would entertain a motion if anyone would like to make one.
If I may, one
Certainly, sir.
brief, this might answer everyone's questions. If it doesn't, I promise I'll stop talking after a minute. We took a look at it, and to Mr. Salisbury's point, the last sentence actually starts with the user may. That is different saying the zoning enforcement officer may. And I don't know if that would satisfy the hook requirement, because then that would clearly state the zoning officer can require it. If it doesn't,
I was following, I'm sorry.
okay,
We
so
want to
the-
remove may.
I actually wanted to change user to zoning enforcement officer, because currently, to your point, it doesn't say the zoning officer can do that, it just says the user can shut the doors. So if we change it to the zoning enforcement officer may require, then that, I think, gets you to the same point of no one has to go anywhere, it's right here, and he just has to say, shut the doors. And if they don't, here's your violation notice.
Yeah, I think that's. So get rid of the word user, so the
Yep.
zoning enforcement may and will.
So that gets where we want to be now, right?
If he agrees, then we don't have to flog this through. If the intent is to try and get
I think,
say the client on the hook saying you can, the zoning
but
enforcement.
now
officer-
we're the driver
Right,
as opposed to, in essence, your tenant.
yes,
And I thought that was just assumed, okay?
I did too, but I'm willing to
I think
change
that
the
works.
one. Okay,
Okay,
And that's just something he can impose.
yes,
thank you.
I think you know, either do that or even just one thing here. I'll be very quick because I know we've been talking about this for a little while now, but just if you change the verbiage, the user shall employ measures such as closing the dock bay doors when not in use and or any other remedy that will limit noise at the guidance of the building commissioner acting as the zoning enforcement officer.
that works too.
Would you like that?
I think I like that one.
I think,
All right.
John,
Say it again. What, you want to say it?
I got it on tape somewhere. I'm
Yeah.
sure it can be.
The user shall employ measures such as closing the dock bay doors when not in use and or any other remedy that will limit noise at the guidance of the building commissioner acting as the zoning enforcement officer. If you want to read my chicken scratch, you're more than welcome to.
I think that works.
All right.
what last one you have?
Yeah.
Hey, look at that.
So we have a motion on the floor. Any more discussion? All in favor of having Jim draft a favorable decision? I'm sorry, we don't have a motion. We need to have a motion.
Have you made favorable decision with the new version?
Okay,
You moved it, or you entertained that he so moved it. Right? Is that what
Yeah.
you-
no, I can't make a motion, sure.
No.
He so moved it. We need a second.
Same thing.
I need a second. You can't because you missed.
Yeah, you're right.
I'll second it.
Okay. All right, we have a motion on the floor to draft a favorable decision pending the changes to this document that will be discussed at our next meeting. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. That motion passes. Gentlemen, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
I appreciate it.
Thank you very much. We appreciate your attention.
Mr.
Thank you,
Chairman,
sir.
Go ahead, neighbor.
Mr. Chairman, before we have the applicant leave, we do need an extension of the deadline of the decision.
Thank you. What's the deadline decision date right now?
June 30th, so maybe, we can do
Can we
it the
make
end.
it, let's say July 30th, that gives us some leeway.
That's fine.
That would
Although
be
we only have one meeting, that give us, enough leeway if something happens that we can't meet the first Thursday of the month.
And is this actually continue to that meeting?
Right, so Mr. Chairman, to that point, I think we do need a motion to continue to July 14th.
Exactly.
Okay, I'd entertain a motion to continue this to July 14th.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you very
Thank
much, gentlemen. We'll see you in a couple of weeks. Enjoy your holiday,
Thank you, you too.
and thank you for working with us. The next item on the agenda is to make a motion to sign the Roger Street Mylars.
These were the plans that were approved at town meeting.
Jim, this is a ministerial function, right? We don't need to.
Right, so the board has already recommended to town meeting to recommend acceptance. The town meeting has accepted it. Registry of Deeds requires the planning board and the select board to sign the Mylar plan. I don't think all registries require this, but Norfolk County does. So we do need a motion to sign this right-of-way plan.
Second.
All in favor, sign the Mylar, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And Jim, I believe our newest member can sign this, correct?
Yeah, go for it.
We have the fancy.
Here's your first pen for signing a Mylar, and you can keep the pen.
I think it's good right there.
What?
We'll take that out of your stipend. Sorry.
I'm sorry?
We have Sharpies.
Those are-
I have
Yeah,
them.
those are Sharpies. Oh, they're fancy. Yeah.
How many copies do we have? I see
Just one.
Just one.
Yeah. Hope it works. Okay, have to take the top off, right?
Oh, I did.
Okay.
I'm not.
Mr.
signing
Chairman?
for it, right?
No, I'm all set. I'll go last.
You wanted to sign it when we close the meeting?
No, I'd like to, before we do that, I'd like to look at the minutes. And before we do that, I'm going to embarrass someone, and I apologize. Tina, outstanding job.
Thank you.
Outstanding job of the minutes.
Thank you.
Unless anyone has any changes, I entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
I will make Rob read them out loud.
Please, nobody second that.
No, we didn't.
I said you.
We have a motion on the floor that has been seconded to approve the minutes of the Thursday, June 9th meeting. Again, it's something we all can vote on. Please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Gentlemen, you can sign the Mylar.
Yeah, I put it over there. I'm sorry. Yeah.
Jim, how many signatures are on there?
How many are needed?
Yes.
Just 3, but you can toss all 5 if available,
Okay.
or 5. Yep.
Oh, no, I'm not going to. Don't
Okay.
worry.
Take them.
Thank you.
Amy, we'll leave that document here with the additional Sharpie pens.
That would be great.
Fine. Motion to adjourn. No, I
Second.
understand the motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor of adjournment, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All right.
Opposed, motion passes unanimously.
All right.
Brian?
Thanks, Jen. Thank